Hello and welcome back to the All Out Brits Podcast, the podcast where we send the house on all things NFL from across the seas here in sunny old England. And as always, we've got plenty to talk about when it comes to the NFL. It's been hotting up for the past few weeks, but now we're getting to the business end. And this week, it was the divisional round, the decider to see who would make it to the championship games of each division. And it did not disappoint whatsoever. This week, we saw more missed field goals than we saw Dak Prescott interceptions. I wonder why that was, Mr. Elliott. I wonder what that was. And we also saw the Kelsey brothers get their kit off to celebrate more than what Mr. Travis, is getting on in the bedroom. So, you know for a fact, it was a great week. And there's plenty to talk about. And as always, to talk about it all with me is the main man, Mr. Elliott Greenwood. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing really well. I'm feeling refreshed, rejuvenated. It's been a fantastic week in the league. The playoff games did not disappoint. There's been some absolute corkers in there, along with some results that I don't really think we've expected, and teams get into places where we definitely didn't expect, looking at you, Detroit. But in total, what a week it's been, and it's getting really exciting ahead of the championship weekend. And yeah, bro, can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, and we will apologise, guys, because for the mass viewers that have been missing our faces this week, we took a holiday. We didn't post much on socials. We did have our podcasts out on YouTube and everything like that, but we didn't post on socials. And I could sense that there was some angst amongst the viewers. But we took a holiday, took a break. We thought if there's ever a time, it's this weekend. Mr. Elliott, where did you end up going in the end, my friend?
I went to the land of fire and ice, the land where Game of Thrones was filmed. I went to Iceland, sir.
Oh, that's very nice.
And I did a bit of networking over there. Spoke to a couple of Vikings, and when they discover Wi-Fi, they're going to definitely be listening to the pod. And your holiday time wasn't it extended by a couple of days or something like that for some reason?
It was because again, I was networking as well. I was trying to get the Irish on board. They already are on board when it comes to NFL and following it from abroad. But once I got past the language barrier, I was able to try and convince a few to watch the podcast. So, you know what? It's been successful. We're getting international, getting more and more expansive. So we're doing pretty well.
Do you know, actually, Tarran, we've got viewers in 12 different countries: Sweden,
Wow.
Australia, Canada, US, UK. But of those 12 countries, did you know that 82% of people who watch our videos aren't subscribed? Do you know how much of a joke that is?
That's terrible. What should they do then, mate?
I think they should like and subscribe and keep coming back for more. That's what you should do.
Great little plug there. Great start to the podcast. And speaking of plugs, why don't we go into the man that absolutely plugged the Texans' dreams and ruined all the hopes and desires that we'd held so deeply for him this year when it came to the playoffs. And that is Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. A first game to talk about in the AFC. A clash, which I'm pretty sure went how we expected it. Quietly optimistic. We thought the Texans, could pull up an upset, but this Ravens team is just way too good. Lamar Jackson setting history. Unfortunately, the fairy tale ends for the Texans and D'Amico Ryan and for CJ Stroud, but I'm pretty sure it won't be very long before they're back in the playoffs. What did you make of the game as a whole, and what does it say about this Ravens team particularly?
I think obviously everyone knew the Ravens should win coming into this one. It was a game that they had to win. We've spoken about it before. They had to win, and they have to keep winning now. They got to build on that. They got to use the momentum that they got. But it was a game for the Texans where obviously they couldn't really get anything going on either side of the ball. They really didn't kind of get a grab of the game at all. In the first half, they were doing okay. They were down by 7 going into the third quarter, but I think that really did show how excellent the Baltimore Ravens were, how they could just turn it on like that, and how much control they have all the time. On offense, CJ Stroud really couldn't get anything done. He had a handful of yards, and really the only touchdown came from that punt return touchdown, which was absolutely electric, absolutely sensational. But let's talk about Lamar Jackson. Over 250 total yards, 100 yards on the ground. Sensational game for him. And 4 total touchdowns being the main kind of stay of that. He's been absolutely brilliant this postseason, but he needs to keep going now. He needs to build on that game and keep that momentum rolling, because in the playoffs, momentum is everything, and how you play is everything. And that Ravens team is balling out. If they can keep balling out, they're going all the way, boy. But we'll see. Obviously, we've been massive fans of CJ Stroud this season.
Mhm.
How do you feel like the season's been for him, and where do you see the Ravens going moving forward?
I mean, we knew that it was going to come to an end at some point. I think we expected it to come to an end a lot sooner, especially with that Browns game. But they did absolutely blow away the Browns. And that's all credit to D'Amico Ryans and all credit to the offense and defense and the whole project that they've got going on there down in Houston. But I think we knew that if they got any further, that'd probably be the end of the fairy tale. And I think for CJ Stroud, it's a season that he needed to have, because I think there was a lot of talk around the draft, especially with all the quarterbacks. A lot was made of sort of his intelligence and a lot of, the factors around him and things like that. And nobody, I think, truly believed out of those three quarterbacks that he would have been the successful one coming out of this season. Obviously, unfair on Anthony Richardson, who was injured but was playing absolutely incredible. Obviously, tough for CJ Stroud going number one, but going to a program where they just don't have anything there really for him. But CJ Stroud has really shone in a team full of rookies, really learning the ropes and rebuilding. But it just shows how amazing the NFL is for me, that you can get teams like CJ Stroud and like the Texans who come together and can challenge and go deep into the playoff season. And then you can get other teams like the Cowboys who keep banging on about how good they are and make it absolutely nowhere. That's the beauty of the NFL. The David and Goliaths, every single season we get them. But what a wonderful story it is. I'll let you put in because you're going to bite yourself otherwise.
I'm not. There's no more talk about the Cowboys. Cowboys are dead to me. There's no more talk. I'm a Bears fan now, bro. I keep saying I'm a Bears fan.
Just checking.
But yeah, I think, like you said, it's been really, really valuable experience for him in the playoffs. It's fantastic for a young quarterback to get this far and do this well. But Lamar was always going to do what Lamar does. And that Baltimore team is hella scary. And when they're playing at home, like they will be next week, that's going to be a really, really good game against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I think it's the first time they've had a home championship game, if I remember that correctly. But also, I did see sort of a lot of talk about Lamar and him as a player this season. And I think people have said he's not the same Lamar Jackson. He's not the same MVP Lamar Jackson, because this is a better Lamar Jackson, because he relies on his assets. Yes, he relies on his legs and everything like that and his passing game. But he's not throwing the ball into stupid places, which we've seen being the downfall of a lot of other quarterbacks in the league this season, especially the elite ones. But he's learned. He seems a lot more mature, which you'd argue is a lot more surprising, considering the fact that they probably don't have those superstar assets you'd expect, the Ravens team to actually have, which they had in previous seasons. You've got an aging Odell Beckham. You've got a lot of rookies around him. Obviously, Mark Andrews, his main sort of target, has been injured. So it's been a really interesting season for Lamar. And obviously, we've talked a lot about the MVP competition and this and that. But I think it's been a great revival for him. Obviously, the off-season issues with contracts. But he's come back. He's balled out. And I think everyone in Baltimore is very happy with him.
Absolutely. He's got Flowers going as well. And I just think he looks really good. He looks like an intelligent player. For the first time, he's not dying to run, and he's not dying to throw the ball in tight windows. He's using his head and he's playing smart football. And that's why the Ravens have gone as far as they have done.
Yeah. And I think what's even better is the fact that they're going to be facing a team who challenged quite a lot in the AFC Championship games. I think they've had 6 consecutive trips or something like that, or 7 consecutive trips.
I can tell you actually, sir.
Oh, go on then. Go ahead, mate. Get the stats out.
So since Patrick Mahomes has been a starter, so bear in mind, the season before Mahomes was a starter, Alex Smith, who then got traded to Washington, he was a starter in Kansas City, and he got into the AFC Championship game. But then when Mahomes came in, I know at the time I was shocked that they trade Alex Smith. I thought, what they're doing? Well, Andy Reid showed faith in his quarterback, and that faith has been repaid massively. Yeah. Going into the game against the Ravens, that is going to be his 17th playoff start, Tarran. Since 1920, the Arizona Cardinals have had 17 playoff games. Just, they were founded in 1920. So in the amount of time that the Arizona Cardinals have kind of been a franchise, Mahomes is, in the few 6 years that he's been in the league, has played in more games than they have. In his first season as a starter, he reaches the AFC Championship game. Second year, he wins a Super Bowl. He then loses the Super Bowl in 2020 to Nick Foles and the Eagles. He then wins the AFC. He gets the AFC Championship, but loses to Joe Burrow. Then he wins a Super Bowl. And this season, where will he go? Will it end end in Baltimore, or will he continue to the Super Bowl? It's been an absolutely sensational career so far for him. And how far can he take this? He's a young guy. He's 28 years old. People are talking about if he wins the Super Bowl this year, can he catch Brady? Can he catch Brady in the amount of rings that he's got? Because why not? If he wins a Super Bowl, it's a Chiefs dynasty. It's got to be in the short space of time. How can he not? How is that not an opportunity to build on everything that he's got? He's got a lot of young receivers. He's got a lot of young players on that team. Why can't he take them and keep taking them the distance? That's what I want to know, Tarran. But this week, that game against the Buffalo Bills, I feel so bad for the Bills fans. I don't know how you feel, but Patrick Mahomes has ended the Bills season in heartbreaking fashion for the last 4 years. It must be horrible to be a Bills fan. I know you've got a Bills fan in your house, Tarran. How did he take it? And and what did you think of the game?
Yeah, well, like you mentioned, and we talked about it quite a bit, Chiefs Bills continually seems to be the recurring fixture that we see a lot of the time when it comes to that AFC bracket. And once again, it delivered. And people talk about it many a times. You can't give Mahomes any time on the clock to do anything with the ball because he will come up. He didn't have to do it, though, this time because the Bills obviously have a few issues. Tyler Bass, unfortunately, obviously, it's not great that he misses and he gets a lot of stick for it. But at the same time, the Bills needed to have a perfect game. They needed to have a game of a lifetime, which doesn't come around very often for this Bills team because there's always someone misfiring. And this time, it seemed like it was Stephon Diggs. It seemed like a lot of it was sort of the special teams having a few issues, and it just did not seem right whatsoever. And this is the funny thing about Kansas is they could be absolutely terrible all season, but when it comes to it, it just clicks at the right time, and they somehow end in this position where they're in the AFC Championship game. When we've been saying they aren't the same team, and they've been dropping catches everywhere, and they've been poor, and they've been this, and they've been that, and still they've made it to this championship game. And who can you put that on? Obviously, the defense has really stood up in the last few weeks. Mahomes hasn't been the Mahomes we know, but he's doing enough to get the team over the line. Travis Kelce hasn't been the most electric, but he's doing enough to get him over the line. And I think that's a problem with the Bills team, is they sometimes just don't do enough to get themselves over the line. And that was the same issue that they had in this game. And it's unfortunate. And as you mentioned, we watched it with the Bills fan, a friend of ours, and we were sat on a cold, freezing airport floor. And I have never seen a phone get turned off quicker, besides when your mum comes in your room when she wasn't meant to, when that field goal went wide right and upset quite a few people in Buffalo and quite a few in Dublin airport as well. So what a devastating time to be a Bills fan. And the big talking point is their Super Bowl window closing? I know a lot of talk is about it probably is still there so long as Josh Allen is quarterback, probably still there whilst they've got Stephon Diggs on that team. But how many years is it going to take for them to just get over this hump of beating the Chiefs? Because they can do it in the regular season, but come the playoffs, they always have a stinking game somewhere and they always mess up, and it just leaves them short every single time. And it's a shame because I would love to see the Bills go deep into a playoff drive, because I think Josh Allen versus any other quarterback, always a great encounter, but they just fall short every single time. Isn't that right?
It really is a different sort of how do I put this? It's a different sort of embarrassment being a Bills fan. It's a different sort of disappointment being a Bills fan. And I know that every single team loses playoff games. Every single team loses games that they should win. But being a Bills fan, when you go to 4 consecutive Super Bowls, this was long before we were born, Tarran, long before we even heard of NFL. When you go to 4 consecutive Super Bowls and you lose them all, and now you've got a generational quarterback, and then 13 seconds comes along, and then you get wide right too. Are the Bills cursed? They've got to be cursed, because they've got this man in Josh Allen. They've got this talisman, and he does everything right. And then suddenly, like that again, the game's flipped on its head, and something happens. Every game, something happens that makes people start asking questions about that Buffalo team. Von Miller as well, coming in the last couple of seasons. He's had a stinking year. He's had like 2 sacks, if that. I think he's had 1 sack, like 17 tackles, something like that. He's had an absolute shocking year when he's been paid the absolute dollar. And Stephon Diggs. How on earth can you be a wide receiver one in your team, and you make drop catches in those crucial situations? For me, he's got to go this season in Buffalo. No, he's got to. He's got to. I can see him going to Dallas and playing with his brother.
Oh God.
No, I literally can't. I literally can't. Him and Trayvon are on the same team. He wouldn't be the wide receiver 1 in Dallas. He'd probably be wide receiver 3, to be honest, the way he's been playing this season. He's been shocking, and he needs to go. It's time to go, Stephon Diggs, whatever your name is. It's time to. He can't make a catch. He cannot make a catch. You can't dispute that.
I mean, he's made quite a few catches this season, caught quite a few touchdowns as well. So,
Nah, it's time for him to go, bro. He's been shocking. And I think Bills fans who watch the games will actually agree with me that it's time for Diggs to go.
Right. Well, we'll leave it to the Bills fans to, Bills Mafia, come shoot up this man because, God, that is a take and a half. I'll leave it for them.
I love Buffalo. I love the fan base. I think they're absolute jokers. But Diggs, man. Nah, not for me. Not Diggs.
I just think you want him at the Cowboys and you're just trying to degrade him and spit on him so that hopefully
I don't, to be honest. He can stay there for all I care. Keep him if you want, but watch what'll happen. History's going to keep repeating itself while the shitters in Buffalo, mate. I promise you.
Well, we've had a lot of it in England and the Premier League where there's talk about Curtis. Maybe they don't talk about it enough in NFL. Maybe someone needs to go have a waz on the goalpost and reverse it all because apparently that ends up working. And we've seen that with Liverpool. We've seen that with Yaya Toure as well. So tell you what, Elliot, you might have opened up the ears and eyes of a lot of people in the NFL to curses. So big work there, pal.
I don't think you'd have to ask a Buffalo Bills fan twice to have a wee on the goalpost. I think they've done a lot worse in tailgating before their games. I mean, again, jumping through tables. Again, on fire. Oh, God. They're vulgar, some of them. Vulgar, Tarran. Well, come on, let's move on.
We'll move away from the vulgar AFC side and head over to the NFC side. Where should we start, mate? Do we want to start with the Niners? Do we want to start with the Lions? I'll let you pick.
Let's start with the Detroit Lions.
Detroit Lions. Go on, then.
Detroit Lions. I love Jared Goff. I love that franchise so much. And I think everyone does. Everyone wants that team. Other than San Francisco, they want that team to go to the Super Bowl. And what a performance it was from the entire team. 2 turnovers, the forced on Baker Mayfield, who himself had a bit of an up and down day. But again, he still managed to get 23 points. But the Detroit Lions were brilliant. Jared Goff was the perfect game manager. And that's kind of what he is. Let's not overhype him. The first overall pick when he was drafted. But he is a glorified game manager at this moment. But why not? He got 8 different receivers involved. He got his running backs involved. I still think they should have given the ball to Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit more. At one point, he was on like 70 rushing yards off just 7 carries. They needed to get him more involved. And I can see them doing that this week. And that's something that they're going to have to do this week in the upcoming game. But I just think the entire city, that's something that they've craved, they've deserved. Before this kind of little playoff run, the last time they had a playoff win was 1991. And before that, it was 1951. Now they've got 2 in quick succession. And I think they're going to go for 3 this week. And we'll see what happens. But for me, Jared Goff was what Detroit needed. And him coming in with Dan Campbell at head coach, it's been fantastic for the entire city of Detroit. And you can't argue with how good and how much of a turnaround that's been in such a short space of time.
Definitely. I mean, like you said, not too long ago, there was a crippled franchise praying for a win. And now look at them playing in the postseason, succeeding in the postseason. And I think I saw a stat somewhere that there's only 3 quarterbacks to have got 14 wins in a regular season for 2 different franchises. One was Brady, the other was Peyton Manning, and then the third is Mr. Jared Goff. So he's got to be doing something right. He's got to be doing something well. So
bro.
It is pulled out of nowhere. But it just shows that the Lions are safe in his hands, and he loves having the ball in his hands, and he's created so much with the ball in his hands. But like you mentioned there, when he hands it off to Jahmyr Gibbs and sort of that backfield he's got, they are an unreal team, and they're all rounded. And I think that's probably what they need to focus on going forward, is make themselves, dual threats. I mean, looking at the Niners game, for example, the Niners really struggled with dealing with the run, really struggled dealing with the run. And so if you can hand the ball off a bit more and sort of, attack the Niners like that, it could be a really interesting game. And obviously they're adding more assets to the offense because Zach Ertz chasing the ring for a second time. He's joined them up as well. So Sam Laporta and Zach Ertz, he's got plenty to throw at. He's got plenty to aim at. So what an amazing season it's been for Detroit Lions. Like you said, it's amazing for the city, amazing for the team. I just hope it's not amazing for too much longer.
I can see that you're dying to talk about about your Niners, bro. So go on. I'll let you chat.
Are you sure, mate?
Talk to me about the San Francisco 49ers versus the Green Bay Packers, and talk to me about how Brock Purdy was outshadowed and he was overshone by Jordan Love, and talk to me about how your D-line got absolutely obliterated by the rush. But talk to me, just talk to me about how you managed to scrape a win against a team that kind of should have bet you when Brock Purdy had 2 dropped interceptions. So go on, talk to me, bro.
Yeah, sweet, perfect.
Thank you,
Well,
bro.
like Elliot Selp there, got to talk about the Niners, baby. Bang, bang, Niners, gang. Back into the NFC Championship. 4th trip in 5 seasons, may I add. So we're doing pretty well. 3 consecutive. Not too bad at all.
How many of those have you converted to Super Bowl wins, can I ask, Tarran?
Mr. Elliot Greenwood.
So that's the most pointless start. That's a pointless start, bro.
You want to know something better? There's only 2 teams that haven't made the NFC Championship this century. Two teams. One, the Washington Commanders, and the other is the Dallas Cowboys. So until you make it there, sweetheart, don't come chatting to me. All right, darling? You pipe down, sit down there, little tart. Right, let me talk my talk. So the Niners game, I was sat in Dublin in a wonderful predicament. You know, I had love on both sides. I had 2 options of love. Either I could have had a masterclass in love provided by myself, or I could have been witness to a disaster class in love provided by no other than Mr. Jordan Love. And you know what?
The flip happened.
I decided to go for the disaster class, and I'm so glad to watch that disaster class because the Niners are going to the championship game, baby. Forget the kisses, forget whatever we could have had. I will take the Niners winning. I'd say that any day of the week. But what was so beautiful about it, I must add, is I've had a lot of talk. I've heard about the fact that Brock Purdy relies on his assets more than a Hooters bar. I've heard it all right? But it was confirmed this week. It was confirmed. Absolutely horrid game. Now, all I'm going to say is the Packers, 100%, they should have come out of that game with a win. It was an ugly game from the Niners, really ugly. But I'm glad they got that ugly game out now. Obviously, Brock Purdy was taking his glove on and off more than Michael Jackson at a concert. But in the end, like the man's shirt that hangs behind me, 2 seasons previous, who managed to drive us down the field after having a stinking game and somehow come up with a drive that ends up putting the icing on the cake for the 49ers and icing the Packers. Brock Purdy does it. And I know he wasn't perfect. I know that everyone is on his case. But if you said to me, you want a quarterback to get you to the one side of the pitch to the other, doesn't matter how bad it is, how bad he's played of a game, but to have the composure to do that, and you said Brock Purdy will do it, I'd believe you. And he showed that. And I'm really happy about it. And we can talk about it at length about how bad the 49ers were, because we were bad. We were pretty bad. I was regretting a lot of decisions when I sat down in this. Oh, actually, shout out Busker's Bar, 49ers Irish Bar out in Dublin. Anyone out in Dublin, go and check that bar out. It was a great home to watch the 49ers win for about half of it, and then they had to close. But an amazing game. But I'll let you talk a little bit about it and how you saw that one, mate.
I think it just shows your loyalty to that team that you went bang bang Niners gang rather than bang bang. You know what I'm saying, bro? So congratulations for that. The loyalties were there. So well done, mate. I think you've definitely embraced the city of San Francisco, and that's something you should be really proud of. You mentioned Brock Purdy taking his glove on and off. It was like O.J. Simpson. The glove just didn't fit that game, did it? It did not fit. But yeah, I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how they kind of perform next week. Yeah. Obviously, they're at home. Detroit coming to them. Detroit haven't had a home playoff game, obviously, in this run. But we'll see how it goes. I think it's going to be a really good game. It's going to be the Game Manager Bowl is what they're all calling it. Brock versus Detroit. I just don't think Brock is shown enough for me, to be honest with you. And he's really good. So I thought, Tarran, that we'd play a quick little game. And it's going to be, who would you rather take, Brock or blank? So I've got a couple of quarterbacks that I'm going to ask you about. Okay. And I want you to tell me if you take Brock or blank. So, number 1, Brock or Trevor Lawrence?
Brock.
Why?
Because Trevor Lawrence is an ugly git.
I agree with you there. I agree with you. Prince Charming, he's not the one.
He's
Number
not charming
two,
whatsoever.
Brock or CJ Stroud?
Brock.
Seriously?
Yeah.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's really shocked me. Number 3, the last one that we'll do.
Okay.
Brock or Jordan Love?
Well, all I'm going to say is Jordan Love is not going to the NFC Championship game, baby. But Mr. Big Cock Brock is. And that's all I can say, Mr. Elliot Greenwood. At the moment, right now, the man with the ball in his hand is Mr. Brock Purdy. And until he breaks my heart like Jimmy Garoppolo did, I'm going to ride with him. And that won't change, bro.
Could have been riding something else if you'd have gone home early that game, bro. But you stuck to your guns.
Yeah.
Bang, bang, Niners gang.
If we'd thrown a pick early on, we'd have been out of there.
You would have been out of there really early. But yeah, again, he had a clean game though, didn't he? And you had a clean game as a result of that. So congratulations, bro.
Cheers, mate. Moving on then. Let's wrap it all up. So we head now. 2 championship games. Incredible postseason run that we've seen so far. Is this going to be one of the most incredible finishes to an NFL season that we've seen in recent times, with not the usual suspects, we'd argue, in the Final Four, really? Do you think that this makes it quite an interesting season where we're not seeing the same old faces, the same old teams? It's quite unique this year, don't you think?
I agree with you, mate. And I'd love Lamar Jackson to do the deed over Kansas City Chiefs. And I'd also love Jared Goff to kind of continue this unbelievable run of form, make it to his 2nd Super Bowl. And I'd love that. I'd love for the city of Detroit to have a ring. I think that would just be an unbelievable, that would be the most talked about story in American sports for years and years to come. That would just be majestic. But obviously, Brock Purdy's going to have something to say about that. But yeah, I think it's been a really interesting season, really engaging season, and there's been lots to talk about, lots going on. And we've been talking about it since week 10, haven't we, Taz? Yeah. And do you know what? The growth that we've seen is exponential. 280% growth in subscribers, and it's just going to keep rolling. Bang, bang, All Out Brits gang.
Bang, bang, All Out Brits gang. That's what you like to hear. And now we know it's a dogfight this last week. We know that there's hand-to-hand combat, really, in these last 2 games. But speaking of hand-to-hand combat, there's a lot of hand-to-hand combat going around the world in many different places. Many people suffering and being affected. And if it came to it, I think we've got to head to the sideline and talk about, with war possibly on the horizon, which would probably interrupt our podcast recordings inconveniently. But if war came to blows, who would you want to be in the trenches with from the NFL lot? Who do you want carrying your bayonet? Who do you want with a grenade in their hand? Who are you trusting? Who are you fighting on the front lines with, Mr. Elliot Greenwood?
If I'm on the front line, I'm there, stood, proud, with the St. George's flag behind my back. I've got the mark of the king on my shoulders.
Stone Island on.
Oh, you got to get the badge in, haven't you? Just show. Hey, that's what we get the badge in. None of this happens. Speak to Rishi, and I'm sorry, we'll sort that out for you. Now, who do I want beside me as I go over the top and I'm crawling towards that front line? Well, I'll be honest, mate. I don't really know. Let's ask you first, because I'm still trying to think about who I want. But yeah, who would you want alongside you, shoulder to shoulder in combat?
Well, I'm just thinking who's going to hold out the longest. Now, I think there's only one man, Mr. Sign Language, all that rubbish that he comes out with, Mr. DK Metcalf, the juggernaut. I want him in my trench. He looks like the kind of guy that'll have a flamethrower on his back and he'll just run across and cause some serious damage. So DK Metcalf, run that in there. I'll take that. But you know who else I think would be an absolute piranha in war?
Go on.
Is Mr. Jackson Mahomes.
Are you going to throw him in front of everyone else and just?
I'm going to throw him. I'm going to send him right over the top, and he's going to be our little dummy run. And the thing is, he's invincible. Anything anyone tries to get rid of him, he don't go.
So he'd renegade past the bullets.
He's blessed by God. I want him to get over that trench and just do his magic. So yeah, DK Metcalf on one side, Jackson Mahomes on the right. And I think backing me up, I don't want to say Jason Kelsey because obviously he's got a family now. I don't want to bring him into this war of attrition that could be going on for a lifetime. But I'm not going to say that either. That's terrible. I'm not going to say that. I was going to say a first round pick from Texas who has got previous, but I don't think that's a great idea. So we'll move on to you, mate.
That's horrific, bro. That's worse than the war. I think who would out? I think DK Metcalf for me. He's going to take up too much room in the trenches. It's going to be nice and it's going to be snug. It's got to be like really small, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's going to be a punter. Like that's what I want. And I want Johnny Hecker. And Johnny Hecker was a former punter for the LA Rams, and he was just so vibes. He was the one who started punters of people too. So I want him alongside me. He's going to be just like he can be next to me, just chatting in my ear, laughing about what's going on, making fun of the situation. On the other side, I want Zach Martin. He's a guard for the Dallas Cowboys. He's an All-Pro. He's a future Hall of Famer. I want him next to me. He's going to be able to lead me like no one else can. And behind me, someone who's going to bring up the rear, push me up. Well, DeAndre Swift. And why DeAndre Swift? He's been doing the bloody tush push all year long, pushing up Jalen Hurts, getting him over the line. So I think he can go up my bum and get me over the line just like he was doing with Jalen Hurts. So that's who I'm going for. A punter, a guard, and a running back, and I'll be the QB in the middle. That's what we're going for.
Well, cheers for that, mate. All I know is I'm not staying in your trench because I don't know what's going on over there, but fair enough.
You're not staying in yours either. There's no room. It's just DK Metcalf.
Me and DK and Jackson. Yeah, it's a long day, mate. A long day. But if the viewers have any options or thoughts on who they'd want to fight alongside them in war, God forbid it ever occur. But if it did, you got a back case. You got a back case. And so I'll let you comment that in the comments. Let us know who you want fighting with you in the Battle of All the Nations. And as always, I think that rounds us off for this week. Don't you think, Mr. Greenwood?
It does. And what an absolutely insightful pod it's been, Tarran. Yeah. It's been a pod of mystery, of suspense, of intelligence and humour. And as always, thank you, sir, for hosting.
Of course. Well, we did have a bet on last week that if the Niners lost, you would host this podcast and do the introduction. But you know what? I'm feeling kind. Why don't you send us home? Why don't you do the outro today? Will that make you feel any better?
It won't, mate, actually. No, I'm just going to do the intro next week. That's what I'm going to do. You've got to give me time to prep, bro. Come on.
Right. Well, it looks like it's left on me. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the All Out Brits podcast. We've had plenty to talk about here, and we've got plenty more coming up as we preview all of the championship games. So keep an eye out on the YouTube, on the TikTok, and on the Spotify, because as always, with all the things we keep bringing to you, we keep sending you back for more. And so we shall see you next time when hopefully we've got a podcast mic in our hands and not an M1 Garand. We'll see you next week on the All Out Brits podcast.
See ya.